Welcome back, TechLate here. Today we are doing the best programming mouse for 2023, and by programming mouse I mean gaming mouse. Now these mice are not sponsored, by the way. I have gone through the liberty of acquiring like $700 worth of mice as a millionaire, and so a lot of really cool mice have come onto the market recently, and I wanted to get my hands on some of these and take a look. These mice all cost pretty much like $100 or more each. So these are the top of the line models for 2023. I basically went out and just bought all the expensive stuff by price. We're going to take a look at these and figure out which one is the best for your programming and gaming needs. First up, we have here the popular G502X Plus. This is the top of the line mouse from Logitech. We also have here the esteemed Razer Viper V3 Pro, favored by professional gamers for its lightness. Also the Razer Basilisk V3 Pro. Now this is a surprise hit. We'll take a look at this in a bit. Now, I've also got here the Logitech G705, part of their Aurora gaming collection. This is basically a girl mouse. And then there's also the Logitech MX Master 3S. This is a hit mouse. Everybody likes this one for office productivity work. We're going to take a look. And then the mouse I'm currently using is the legendary G502 Hero from Logitech. And this mouse, it is so legendary, there's even an entire subreddit dedicated to it. Shout out to r/G502 Master Race. But first off, why even do this entire silly exercise? Why upgrade? Well, it's because as much as I like the G502 Hero, it's wired, and I want a wireless solution because I travel occasionally and I don't want to mess around with all these cables and transport this thing around. So I wanted to see if there's anything better out here. Now, quick pause. This video is brought to you by myself, techinterviewpro.com. Check it out. Ex-Google, ex-Facebook, interview training. Give yourself the best possible chance at passing these technical interviews with me. I worked as a staff software engineer at these FANG companies, top tier Silicon Valley companies. I know what they're looking for. And what happens is a lot of people they fail. They mess up with little careless mistakes. They misanswer a question here or there. They don't have the right preparation and they just mess up year after year. The recruiters provide no feedback and they just waste like 5-10 years on this process until they finally get into their dream companies. And so this program is designed to help save you those years of struggle. Check it out, techinterviewpro.com. So let's jump into it and see what we've got here and check out some of the latest mice on the market. First up is the G705 from Logitech. Now this mouse, you can see it's actually kind of for smaller hands, which right away is a deal breaker for me because it just doesn't really fit my hand well. It's ergonomically just too small and it causes arthritis for me. Now there's typically 3 different ways you can hold a mouse, by the way. There's the palm grip, which is the most ergonomically comfortable. The mouse fits in the palm of your hand. There's also the claw grip where you kind of hold it like a claw. And then there's the fingertip grip where you're just using the tips of your fingers to control the mouse. But typically I like the palm grip. It is the most comfortable for long hours of work, although the other grips may give you finer control. So on the G705, I would probably be using like a fingertip grip. We can see the other features of this mouse. It is wireless, which is very nice. It's got about 40 hours of battery life, PTFE feet, and by the way, you can see these pads are really nice and big for the ladies, of course. PTFE is the plastic that allows the mouse to slide more smoothly across surfaces. This mouse aesthetic, by the way, you'll notice is this soft pastel look with frosted plastic accents. The RGB lighting also looks softer, so it's part of Logitech's Aurora lineup, kind of targeted towards this niche group of gamers. I think it's really them just trying to bring in more female gamers for smaller hands. So this mouse, obviously not really for me. The scroll wheel, there's really no inertia, right? It just ratchets. So there's no travel, and for a productivity mouse, you kind of want a bit of the scroll flick motion where you just scroll it kind of like on your phone, and the website just scrolls a little bit. You have a little bit of motion. Otherwise, you have to just keep doing this for each line you want to read. It can get burdensome. Maybe a nice travel mouse, but then again, Logitech also makes like an MX Anywhere mouse. It has a really nice scroll wheel that's free spinning. So you may want to look into this if you want a travel mouse. But personally for me, I travel quite a bit, and I just want one mouse that fits my entire lifestyle that I can get used to rather than switching mice all the time. So let's take a look at our next mouse here, the Razer Viper V3 Pro. Now this mouse is actually super basic, but you can see it's super light too. It's actually just 58 grams. So probably the lightest mouse here in comparison to G705, which is smaller, is 85 grams. That's like 50% heavier. And my current mouse, the G502 Hero, is 121 grams, twice as heavy. So the lightness is really what defines the Razer Viper V3 Pro. This version is also wireless, so it gives you unbridled freedom, giving you 80 hours of battery life. Now on the downside, this mouse is super basic. There's not even RGB, and it just feels pretty hollow and light. It's very minimal. It does have all the professional features you want though. PTFE skates on the back. The scroll wheel is fairly decent. Again, there's no travel here. You've got 5 basic buttons, left, middle, right, and then 2 on the side. But other than that, it's a fairly large mouse, and you can see why it's favored by a lot of professional gamers because it just does what it needs to do. Now that said, take note, Razer software does not support Mac, so for $150 if you buy this, you don't get to customize anything on the Mac, maybe a little bit pricey. This also does not support Bluetooth, so if you want the wireless capability, you have to plug in like a USB receiver piece for this, and then you gotta carry these 2 pieces around wherever you go. So in comparison, when I compare that to my current mouse, let's take a look at the G502 and what makes this mouse so good. So number one, it does have that all-important RGB, very nice. It is wired, of course. It's got this weight system where you can add in additional weights if you like. I like the lighter mice though, so I don't put in anything. It's got an additional aim button on the side where you can slow down your DPI when you're zooming in for those headshots in FPS games. You've got a scroll wheel that's actually got a little bit of travel. You know, the Viper does not have this travel. And then you can also unlock the scroll wheel into free spin mode, which is really useful when you're going through long web pages. And then there's 2 additional buttons on the side here as well, where you can program those to do whatever you like, and it works on Mac as well. And featuring a palm grip, it really makes the G502 Hero a classic, but Logitech recently released an updated version, the G502X Plus. So let's take a look at this one. There's a few versions of this. This is the wireless version with RGB. It's like $150, $160 or so. So this mouse, I actually had really high hopes for when I began using it, and it's still pretty good actually, but more or less, it's basically the same mouse as the G502. It's almost indistinguishable in many ways. It feels the exact same, I would say. But there are a few differences. Number one is the entire styling, and I think that's probably the biggest thing. If you just like the way this mouse looks, it's got some RGB lights on the side, and it's got a little bit of new rubber material for your thumb on the side. So if you just like the styling of this mouse, maybe something to look into. You can actually take off the aim button on the side. You can replace it and just get rid of that if you don't like it there. You'll notice that the scroll wheel is actually pretty bad actually. I think the scroll wheel is terrible on this mouse, quite frankly. It's noisy, it's ratchety, there's this grating sound, there's basically very little travel to it. They just removed the travel from the original G502. And this is one reason that I didn't like the G502 Lightspeed either. The ratcheting is just, it's so grating, and so there's quite a bit of friction. There's a free spin mode, but the scroll wheel is made lighter, so it's a little bit more finicky, and the scroll is too fast in my opinion. So I think the scroll wheel is a bit of a step backwards, and you can just imagine going through web pages, trying to do your research. This might get on your nerves a little bit. But other than that, it would be a great gaming mouse where you maybe want a bit of friction as you're scrolling through your items or arsenal. The mouse clicks are pretty solid. I would say the sound of the clicks are more hollow sounding than the other one. It's a little bit less pleasing. There's a bit more twang to it. There is also no Bluetooth capability. So again, for this, you have to carry around a little dongle. And you know, if you're traveling around, you just got to carry 2 pieces around. And so the problem with these so-called wireless mice, by the way, is they're not really wireless because they're still very much tethered to the computer. You need a way to charge these. The battery life for this is just about 137 hours without RGB, 40 hours with RGB on. And then even if you do travel, you need to carry around this USB receiver wherever you go. And if you're on a MacBook like me, then you got to carry around this adapter for USB to USB-C connections. And in my usage, I found this would use about 20% of its battery per day, so it would last maybe 4 to 5 days or so, I'd say. On the inside, this mouse is apparently using some new hybrid mechanical optical sensors for its clicks. You know, it's not really super noticeable for me, but it should last a little bit longer. Other than that, the cable that this ships with is also a plastic cable, not as nice as the corded braided cable that comes with the original G502 Hero lineup. So I really wanted to like this mouse. As a current user of the G502 Hero, I thought this would be my next mouse, but in the scroll wheel is just, I can't deal with it. Not for productivity purposes as I'm going through websites. It's too noisy. I can't do this. Moving on to the next mouse here is the MX Master 3S. Now this mouse is an office mouse, very different in category from the other gaming mice. It's actually very heavy from the weight. It's a 141 grams, the heaviest mouse out here. And it would not be great for like FPS games because you'd just be dragging this paperweight everywhere you go. But surprisingly, it is really nice actually. If you're using the older versions of this mouse, you'll notice this new one is actually, the clicks are refined to be almost silent. The scroll wheel is actually much quieter as well now, so it's a beautiful experience as you're scrolling through web pages. And personally, I found myself really liking the experience of this updated version of the mouse. I had used the older MX Master 3 before, but this one is just the silence of the buttons and the scroll wheel I think are really nice. You've got a thumb scroll wheel on the side, which is good for horizontal scrolling, for example. 2 additional buttons on the side that you can map. I like to map these to New tab and Close tab. And ergonomically, it's just a very nice shape. You can use this for hours. And this scroll wheel, if you haven't tried it, it's basically the best in the industry. There's nice travel to it. There's a good weight, high quality materials. It's got free spin mode as well. I would have no trouble recommending this one. It's like $100 or so, and it's got a 70-hour battery life. Sorry, 70-day battery life based on just a 3-hour charge, so you can use this for like 2 months or so. And it's got Bluetooth wireless capability. What else is new compared to the prior versions? This is using an 8000 DPI sensor compared to 4000, but you know, typically I use like 1600 DPI, so you don't really need much higher DPI than say 4000 or so. And on the back, you can see there's a few PTFE skates, but these are pretty thin. And so the only thing about this mouse is it's not really good for gaming. It's kind of heavy and there's no RGB. And now's a good time to mention that we do have 2 entirely different categories of mice here. You've got the productivity office mouse or the gaming mouse, and maybe the best setup is just having one of each. Right, so when you want to do productivity stuff, use like an MX Master 3. When you want to do your gaming, use like a G502 Hero, and this is like 35 to 40 bucks nowadays. So these two together would be an excellent combination, basically the best in each category, productivity and gaming. Now the only thing is this doesn't really work for me because I like to travel sometimes. I just want one mouse to carry around. I don't want to mess around with 2, which brings us to drumroll, really our mouse of 2023. And this was a surprise hit for me, the Razer Basilisk V3 Pro. Now this mouse, I had no idea I would actually like it, but it is essentially Razer's clone of the Logitech G502 Hero. So Razer decided to play catch up, and surprisingly they made a very nice mouse. First up, and most importantly, the RGB. You can notice an underlight of RGB along the side. The scroll wheel is illuminated as well. There's a logo light on the back as well. Styling wise, looks very cool. It's a beautiful mouse, I would say. And the scroll wheel is this nice material, and you'll notice there's a bit of travel here too. It's really nice actually. Plus there's a free spin mode as well on the scroll wheel. And so this scroll wheel is new on the Razer Basilisk V3 Pro. They call it Hyperspeed or something. Now compared to the G502, it lacks the 2 additional buttons on the top, which I didn't really use too much, but similar to the G502, it does have these 2 additional buttons along with the aim button here as well to slow your DPI. On the back, PTFE feed, and it's got a new sensor that apparently tracks on glass as well now. So the only other sensor that really tracks on glass is like the MX Master 3 with its dark field sensor. So these 2 sensors are kind of unique in that regard. Now without the RGB, this has a battery life of about 90 hours, which is considerably shorter than the G502X Plus at about 140 hours. Now in terms of sound, I find these clicks to be much more robust and pleasing to the ear than the hollow twangy clicks that you tend to get with the G502X Plus. And the overall feel and quality of the materials and the mouse feel higher quality than say the very basic Razer Viper. On the side, there's a nice rubber grip area, and the mouse also ships with a nice braided cable if you need to get this wired up, unlike the G502X Plus, which now comes with a plastic cable. Plus, this mouse is somewhat unique in featuring Bluetooth connectivity, kind of a rare thing for these other wireless mouse, and it features the traditional wired mode using a USB receiver plus wired mode as well. So with the Bluetooth mode, I think it's very useful if you're at a cafe or airport, you want to quickly do some work without messing around with the dongles, you can switch to Bluetooth, and then if you want the higher performance, you can switch to wireless mode with your USB receiver. Now you may be wondering what the difference is, by the way. Basically in Bluetooth mode, the performance is lessened. The mouse is pulling at about 90 Hz, 90 times per second. Whereas when you switch it to wireless mode using the USB receiver, it is pulling at 1000 Hz, or it could even be higher. And so that's one big difference with these gaming mice. Most of them are pulling at like 1000 Hz or higher maybe. Compared to like a productivity mouse like the MX Master 3, this is doing 90 Hz on Bluetooth. If you use the USB receiver, it's going to do 125 Hz, and that's about it. And you may be wondering, well, does the pulling rate really make a difference? Like my screen actually, this is a 4K monitor, it refreshes at 60 Hz. So isn't 60 Hz the cap? right? I can't see faster than 60 hertz on this. So I did the test. I would just slowly move the mouse back and forth across the screen, and I observed this motion. On Bluetooth, I noticed it just kind of skipped and moved around. There's a lot of mouse stuttering, actually, micro stutters, people would call it. And then I compared that to a 1000 hertz polling rate using a USB receiver, and I noticed the motion to just be much smoother, much more consistent. Even visually, I could see the mouse just smoothly gliding across my screen, and it wasn't doing those micro stutters anymore. So this probably isn't super important if you're doing productivity work, but if you're doing gaming like an FPS shooter and you want really smooth motion, then you're probably going to want the 1000 hertz polling rate with a gaming mouse. And so maybe that smooth motion along with the lightness of this mouse is what justifies a gaming mouse. And once you see the smoothness of the motion, it's hard to kind of unsee that. Now, there's just one huge major problem with this mouse, which is that it is not supported on Macs. So if you're on the Windows, then it's going to be a great experience for you. On the Mac, you just can't customize anything about this. I can't really customize the buttons. I can't customize the lighting. I can't even see the battery left on this thing. So if you're on the Mac like me and you want to use this mouse, you have to jump through a few hoops to do that. I was playing around with another third-party app, USB Overdrive, to try to program these buttons. I found that app to just be crashing and hitting my computer all the time. So now I'm trying to use steer mouse. And so using that, I've been able to program these side buttons, making this mouse usable for me. You know, the battery indicator and the RGB customization I'm willing to do without, make those sacrifices if I can use this mouse. And so there you have it. Congratulations to the Razer Basilisk V3 Pro for being my best overall mouse for productivity and gaming all in one. You know, they brought the innovation to the original legendary G502 hero. Logitech tried with the G502X Plus lineup, but with this mouse, the improvements were just incremental and the scroll wheel took a step backwards, whereas with the Razer, they brought in the Bluetooth, they brought in new technology for a better scroll wheel, and they've got the stylish RGB lighting, improving on the legendary design of the original G502 hero. Now, I have to note though that for most people, I would probably recommend that if you just want to do productivity, just go with an MX Master 3. If you want to do some gaming, bring this in as well. And really, these two are a great combination for your productivity and gaming needs. It's really only for people like me, if you want like a single mouse to just do everything and you travel with, that you might want to go with a single all-in-one mouse like the Basilisk V3 Pro. But this conversation is far from over. Let me know what are your favorite mice in the comments below. And if you liked the video, give a like and subscribe. See you in the next one. Thanks. Bye.